You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we'll get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? On this episode, meet Meaghan Hackinen. She is an ultra-endurance cyclist who recently completed the Tour Divide, which is over 2,700 miles of self-supported bike racing that follows the Great Divide mountain bike route, which starts in Banff, Canada, all the way down to the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, not only did Meaghan finish this grueling race, 7th overall, with a time of 15 days and 23 hours, she nailed first place in the women's division. Meaghan is on to tell us a bit about how she embraced the grittiness of this race by staying what she describes as consistently consistent. In addition to being an ultra-endurance athlete with countless wins and FKTs, she's also a writer with 2 books focused on two-wheel adventures, both South Away, the Pacific Coast on Two Wheels, and Shifting Gears, Coast to Coast on the Trans Am Bike Race, are available for purchase. So here's my interview with Meaghan. Well, a very warm welcome to Meaghan Hackinen. How are you doing, Meaghan?
I'm doing good. I just hopped off my indoor trainer, so I'm feeling all fired up and ready to chat.
Awesome. And I'm amazed that I was able to, schedule a time to talk to you when you're not on an epic adventure. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've had a pretty busy summer.
That's for sure. And I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, but to go to your website, you call yourself a writer, a cyclist, and an adventure seeker. And I love that little saying because, of course, I think of you as a cyclist, adventure seeker, and then a writer. So it's just interesting, to hear more about it.
Right. Yeah. I think the adventure seeker is just like a catch-all for everything else I do that doesn't quite fit. Like I do a little bit of snowshoeing and a little kayaking, and I like to get lost in the woods. But, I'm not really like an avid like winter sports person or anything. So
sure.
just everything kind of falls under that realm that doesn't fit into riding or cycling.
And I guess ultra endurance adventure cyclist is probably a good way to describe what you do. But before we get into that, will you tell the listeners where you call home and if there's a cycling culture there?
For sure. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. It's a town of about 200,000 people, 4 hours east of Vancouver and maybe 6 hours west of the Rockies. So we're in this gorgeous valley with vineyards and lakes and big mountains around. So there's kind of this winter sports culture. And I would say like more mountain biking and off-road cycling. There's also a long history of triathlon here because we've got Great Lakes and, nice roads for cycling and then good spots to run as well. But I think the cycling culture here that I'm involved is probably more people getting out on the gravel roads and kind of linking up Forest Service roads and route sharing about interesting places to be. And I'm not super involved in the local cycle culture, I think, because I travel in the summer so much. But I do ride with a women's bike club called Excel, and they're a group of lovely ladies that rides every Wednesday, and just connecting with other people that are finding and making and exploring routes and finding people like on Strava and bumping into people in the woods being like, hey, like I think I follow you on Strava. Are you Nathan? And then like, yeah, of course. Like, you're Meaghan. Oh my gosh, I've been following you too. So then, yeah, making friends that way has been kind of fun. But I guess I hope that answers your question.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I'm curious, most people don't want to disclose how many bikes they actually own, but do you have different, like a road bike and an adventure bike and a fat bike and a gravel bike? Or, I mean, do you stick with just one bike or do you have many?
I have 4 bikes. One is called Red, and it's in Portland, where my partner lives. And it's a single speed bike, a single speed steel frame bike that I just use for getting around, so I don't have to travel the bike when I go to visit him all the time.
Yeah.
And then I've got my road bike. Her name is Epona. She's kind of a relaxed fit endurance. What's it? So not a Cervelo. She's Cannondale. And then I have my Cervelo time trial bike named Sarah. I pull her out about once a year when I want to go really fast on flat ground. And then my primary bike right now is my adventure bike, the Salsa Cutthroat, that I've named Amelia after Amelia Earhart. And she's the one I ride most frequently. She's a fully rigid drop bar mountain bike with a lot of great adventures under her wheels, including the Tour Divide this summer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't imagine if that bike could only talk, all the adventures it's been on.
Yeah, exactly. No, she'd probably be like, why, really, this? Like, can I just get a break? Like, can you just take another bike out for once? Like,
can you wash me once in a while? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so your bikes can't talk, but of course you can. And you have an amazing website that talks about all the different things that you've done. And you're also an author, like we mentioned at the beginning. But you, at least 2 books that I know of, South Away, The Pacific Coast on 2 Wheels, like it just... even reading the title makes me want to know exactly when, how long, how was it, all of that good stuff. So do you want to tell us a little bit about, the process of the adventure and then turning it into a book?
Yeah, for sure. So South Away is the story of my first long distance bike trip. And I graduated university, I think, in 2009, and my sister was graduating at the same time. She's younger than me, but smarter, so she just ripped through university a bit quicker. And we wanted to do something big and epic to celebrate it, and we both traveled before. I'd been to New Zealand and Southeast Asia, and she'd been to India and New Zealand as well. And we wanted to do something a little bit different that was more reliant on our human power instead of hitchhiking and taking trains and buses and relying on other systems. We wanted to be reliant on ourselves to get somewhere. And we have a family history of cycling. Some people have, some people have pointed this out to us, and I guess it's definitely true. My grandmother was an avid cyclist, and she was from the Netherlands, where there's a deep cycling culture, and she cycled across Canada in her older years, as well as Australia, and some pretty cool trips like that. And my dad cycled the Pacific Coast when he was in his 20s, so I guess they kind of inspired us. Yeah. And so we wanted to do this trip. We didn't know what we were doing, and we just kind of looked at a map and said, wouldn't it be cool to go down the Pacific Coast from where we're living in Surrey, BC, to the tip of the Baja Peninsula. And so we kind of set this date for the September after we graduated. And we gave ourselves the summer to work and save up money. And I moved to northern BC to work at a museum. I studied archaeology and anthropology. And I started riding from northern BC out towards the coast. And then I took a ferry to Vancouver Island and rode down and met my sister where she was living on the southern tip of Vancouver Island. And she was working at an eco village, living in a tree house, and I picked her up, and kind of a hippie agriculture, permaculture existence, and then we just headed out down the coast, and we learned a lot along the way. Like I said, it was our first big tour, and it was 2009, so we didn't have access to the same technology and resources. I think that it was so much harder to find information. We carried a paper book with us. We had one cell phone between the two of us that we didn't really use because it was so expensive. So we called home using pay phones. We had to navigate based on what this map told us, and we had to pull it out every time we got to a critical intersection. And we just had wild adventure. We did couch surfing and warm showers, stealth camping. We didn't have a lot of money. we fought a lot as kids, so it was a chance to get to know each other as adults and bond that way. And the book came about when I was doing my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing in 2014 to 2016. And I wanted to tell a story about cycling. And because this was my first trip, it was lodged so strongly into those memory banks. And I just started writing about it, and it really came out. And there was a strong narrative arc. There was some personal growth for me that I was able to talk about. And so the book is a story of that first trip, but also kind of the other strong women in my life and my relationship with my sister, my mom, and my grandmother, and what it's like to be a woman, on the road, having an adventure, and what that maybe looks like. As well as the kindness of strangers and just the joy of discovering something new. Yeah. And I was really happy that I was able to complete this for my Master's of Fine Arts and then pitch it to a few different Canadian publishing houses and find a publisher and a home for it. And I was lucky that, they're an eclectic publishing house out of Edmonton, and their editor there really championed my work. She was quite outdoorsy herself, and just said, this would be a great piece to publish, and now it exists in the world, and you can find it at your local bookstore. If you probably have to order it in advance. You can get it at places like Barnes and Noble, as well as Amazon, and it's available at a lot of libraries and in ebooks. So it brings me a lot of joy to have that story out there.
Oh, for sure. And I'm assuming that you've probably sparked some excitement into bike packing in other people who have read it.
I hope so. Yeah, I think as an author, I don't feel like I want to tell people what to do or what not to do. I hope that they can interpret the work as they like, and if it sparks a desire to get out on your bike, that's great. And if it just is pure entertainment, that's also fine. I get a lot of comments saying like, you were so naive, and as if it's like a character flaw. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, sure I was. But I also had some wonderful experiences, and I feel like I documented them honestly because, maybe I was naive, but that's not a bad thing.
Right. And would you say, we can delete it if we need to, but would you say that your relationship with your sister was like solidified from that adventure?
Yeah, I think we came out of it. We came out of it really close because we were traveling on such a budget and sleeping in this tiny tent together. And like when we got to Mexico, we were like, oh, Mexico will be warm. But it was December and it's really cold in the desert at night. So we only got one sleeping bag to share.
No.
So we had to snuggle under that together, and we would just share coffees and cookies and anything we got, we just shared it. So we became really close. And then when we got home, we actually both moved back in with our parents, and we were sharing a bed because my parents turned my sister's bedroom into a yoga room. And so, we were in the same bed for 2 weeks, and then she took off to do her master's degree, and I took off to go live in Vancouver, I guess. But it was funny. After sharing a tent for 3 months, the bed felt like luxurious. So,
That's awesome. I love it. So you went from this, adventure kind of with your sister post-college, and then do you feel like, or maybe I should just ask it a different way. How did the spark into endurance racing get into your head, as far as maybe you did it before, or did it just happen after that, first big adventure?
Yeah, it took about 7 years before I considered racing and 8 years to actually do my first event. Yeah, so it wasn't really that quick, but I'm from a pretty competitive background. I used to play like team sports in high school. I really loved rugby. And as an adult, I had some knee injuries. I did some snowboarding and hiking. And then I discovered roller derby when I was living in Vancouver after that bike trip. And I loved roller derby. I loved like the physicality of it, the camaraderie, just being around these, kick-ass, awesome women. It was such a joy to me to get to be part of that. And then my knee injuries got worse as I got more competitive in roller derby. And after my second ACL surgery, the physio kind of said, really, you can't do contact sports anymore. Like, you got to find another hobby. And I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
So cycling was something, it was such a bummer, but there's there's so many sports out there to kind of choose from. So I leaned into cycling more after I had my knee injury. I think that was 2014 or 2015 that I had my second surgery, and I was living in the prairies of Canada in Saskatoon doing a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing and working on South Away. And I discovered the sport called randonneur cycling. And for those who don't know, randonneur cycling is a non-competitive form of long-distance cycling where riders do routes between 200 and 1,200 kilometers within a specified time limit. And there's checkpoints, and you have a little brevet card that you get stamps or signed off on. And it's really about, camaraderie and doing these long rides, but not necessarily doing them super fast, but, getting to the finish in a reasonable time and experiencing the environment. And as someone who was in grad school and didn't have a car, it was really exciting for me to explore my new community by bike this way. And I loved the people I met. I loved getting out on the open plains. I love being able to go to diners and just feast on things, and every weekend doing an epic ride. So it really fit my lifestyle at the time. And then that summer, Lil Wilcox won the Trans Am bike race. So it was the summer of 2016. And seeing a woman win a race of that caliber just really put ultra on my horizon. And I was like, oh man, okay, like I had no idea people did stuff like that. But if she can do it, maybe I can do it as well. And I had some big tours under my belt at that time. I'd been doing these 200 to 1,200K rides all summer and just felt like it was a competitive outlet that maybe I could pursue. And my knees had been fine, and they in general have been fine cycling, which is great. So after that, I invested in a proper road bike. I'd been using kind of this like cheapish commuter bike that I called a touring bike, but it was really like a hybrid mountain bike, road bike commuter with flat bars and just not very like special. I got it used for like $700, which is nothing in bike world money. Right. So I invested in a road bike in the fall of 2016 and started researching how to do bike pack racing and ultralight cycling. And there was a lot more resources around then when I was trying to get into that compared to 2009 when like I didn't even have a computer where I was living in 2009 once I graduated. I had to like use my work computer to Google routes and things. So it was a lot different to be able to research and read people's blogs and stuff. But it was still hard for me to kind of get into bike pack racing, I'd say, because no one in my community did it. And I didn't know anybody else who raced. So I was just kind of researching stuff. Yeah. And I didn't have anyone to really like ask race specific questions. And the randonneur cyclists were awesome. And they taught me so much about riding through the night and just, fueling regularly and being safe. But they stayed in hotels. They didn't sleep in ditches. They didn't use bivy bags. Like they were maybe like not as gritty in some ways as I knew that I would. They didn't embrace the grittiness the way you have to in those long ultras and become this feral like animal on the road. So I had a lot of unknowns going into it.
Well said on embracing the grittiness. I still don't understand how you can do what you do without sleeping or without losing your mind and your focus. So hopefully you have an answer for that at some point.
I think it's trying to keep focused is so hard as you get more and more fatigued. And it's something that, it seems pretty simple. You just ride your bike. But once you've been on your bike for a few days, you kind of just start thinking of an excuse to stop, right? Oh, my cleat needs to be adjusted. Or, maybe my tire isn't the optimal pressure. And you just find reasons to get off the bike, which just slows you down even further and delays your progress. And you can kind of see yourself, you can see yourself making excuses, but you can't always stop yourself from doing it. So yeah, I would say focus is really challenging for everyone, but it helps to have clearly defined goals and just remember why you're out there, what you're hoping to do, and embrace that grittiness, that dirtiness, but also the for me, the landscape just brings me so much joy. I enjoy being out in the open air and moving through places, whether it's like along the shoulder of a highway or out on a Forest Service road, just surrounded by trees and fresh air. I like moving through places on my bike, and that feeling of flow never seems to get old. So
I love it. And I want to skip ahead because, the reason that I had asked you to be on the podcast was because of your recent finish in the Tour Divide, which hopefully everybody knows what the Tour Divide is. I'll give you a chance to talk a little bit about it. But I followed you on social media, and I was absolutely like, every time that you would be on a post or a reel or a story, you were always like, look at where I am, look at this beautiful land, or, I'm tired, or I'm eating this, but you always seemed like you wanted to be there.
I'm glad it came across that way.
Yeah.
I did feel like that is accurate. I did feel like that's accurate sentences, Meaghan. Come on. I did really enjoy being there, and it's such a historic, beautiful route. Yeah. And I guess I wanted to, I didn't think too much about the stuff I was posting, but I wanted to kind of, show how cool it was and not just like the suffering, because I think we all know that it's going to be hard and it's going to be hard aspects. And I didn't feel like the need to maybe drive that home all the time. And I feel like in my posts, I talk about some of the tougher things, but I think the magic of it is really what I think will stick with me even more.
And so Tour Divide, will you tell us maybe just like the short version of what exactly Tour Divide is?
For sure. So the Tour Divide is an annual self-supported grassroots bikepacking race that starts in Banff, Alberta, and it goes down the spine of the Continental Divide following the Great Divide mountain bike route to Antelope Wells, New Mexico, which is on the Mexico-New Mexico border. So it's just like a little border station. There's not really much there. And the Grand Depart takes place on the second Friday of every June. And you can ride the route as a tour anytime, and you can do it as an individual time trial anytime you want as well. But the big Grand Depart takes place the second Friday of June, which is a challenging time because there's still snow and cold weather up in the north. But that's the day everybody leaves. And the rules around self-supported bike pack racing are that you must be self-sufficient. You can't have friends do bag drops for you. If you have a friend staying along the route or who lives on the route, you can't stay at their house. You have to book your own accommodations. So it's really, figuring things out for yourself is part of the challenge and part of what makes the race such an adventure, because there's a lot of information available, like, what the towns are. You have to follow a set route, and it's easy to, Google and see where the hotels are and what the store hours are and things like that. But it's still a pretty big adventure, and there's not a ton of resupply, a lot of gas stations, a lot of convenience stores. I say a lot. Those are your options. There's not a lot of like great options. There'll be like a camp store in some small town. And in knowing where those are, it's kind of like a resupply and then a mountain pass, and then another small town with a resupply and another mountain pass. So you're really out there on your own a lot of the time. And I guess getting to experience kind of this whole breadth of different environments, different environments in the mountains, right? Like the BC Rockies, they're so much different than, the desert areas with cactus and tarantulas of New Mexico. So you get to kind of see everything along the way, which is, just really, really amazing.
And it's, like you mentioned, it's a race, but it's 2,700 miles of racing, which, I hope people are really take a second to think about that. 2,700 miles of racing. And I don't even know if you ever got to see any of your competitors, because I'm assuming that you get super spread out, but you won. You were first place women's division, 7th place overall. And I'll let you share with the listeners how long it took you to bike 2,700 miles, because this is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, it was 15 days and 23 hours.
Wow.
And I guess I'll just stress, thank you. But it's not like biking on the road. It's biking on gravel and forest service roads and quad trail. I think it's about 10% pavement. So most of it is kind of rougher terrain, and it can be even more difficult if there's a thunderstorm and then the road turns to peanut butter death mud, or if there's snow, or if it's just really rocky and washboardy. So there's all sorts of surfaces that are less than ideal that you're coming onto, which is, it just makes it a lot more difficult to estimate time than when you're on the road and you can, that it will be pavement.
Well, and I'm assuming that you're taking a lot of risks as far as when, those occasional gas stations or resupply places are going to be open, or do they know you're coming so they stay open all the time?
Well, yeah, they don't really do that. It's kind of knowing the hours of places, and there's lots of very limited store hours in smaller towns. And then once in a while you get to some big crossing with the interstate, and there'll be a Love's that's open 24 hours or something like that. But yeah, definitely knowing where the resupplies are and the hours. And then I listened to a podcast with another athlete who had raced, and he said that he always had food for 24 hours on him. So I kind of tried to go with that. And sometimes I felt like I had too much food, but really the only penalty you're paying is an extra weight that you have to carry around. So I would, rather have a little bit too much than too little. Just kind of being a little bit more over prepared. And in general, water isn't too much of an issue if you have a filter or tablets, because there's lots of good water sources in the north, and it gets a little more difficult as you get further south. And then once you get to some of the areas in New Mexico, you've got to know where you're going to resupply water and kind of plan to bring a bit extra.
Did you have a go-to, I don't want to say favorite, but a go-to gas station food that you're like, I cannot wait to get my next whatever?
Ice cream sandwiches. I love ice cream
Really?
sandwiches.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, like the cookie ones. I had like a churro cookie one that will forever live on as being the most delicious thing I ate. I think I was in a hurry, so I stuffed it down my shirt, and I got a few K out of town, and I was like, oh, right, the sandwich down my shirt. I wondered why it was so cool and refreshed feeling. And the nice thing is they don't get messy because they're all sealed, right? So they'll melt a little bit, but they're still sealed. So yeah, I loved ice cream sandwiches. I ate a lot of licorice, a lot of Twizzlers. It's high calorie and pretty easy to eat, but I definitely got sick of the Twizzlers. I just, I kept buying them because they were economical and seemed to digest well. And then I ate a lot of frozen burritos. Sometimes I'd microwave them. Sometimes I'd put them in my pocket and wait for them to warm up with the day.
Nice. Will you give us some highlights of the gear that you had with you and, of course, your bike?
For sure. So I used the Salsa Cutthroat, which is kind of a Tour Divide race-built bike. Like I said, it's a drop bar, rigid mountain bike. One of the favorite features that I have on my bike is not favorite features, but I have a bear spray mount on my front fork, which is a nice place to keep my bear spray. And you don't need it so much in the south, although there are bears in New Mexico, but there's more grizzlies in BC, Alberta, and Montana, and into Wyoming. So the first third is pretty dense grizzly population. So just knowing my bear spray is someplace close, and it's locked in there, so it's easy to reach, but not going to bounce off my bike, gave me a lot of comfort, and especially since I ended up riding at night more than I had planned to. So the bear spray holder on the front fork was one thing that I really liked. I don't really make a lot of modifications to my bike. I'm not like a gearhead. I can't even tell you what kind of group set and stuff I had on there. I just ride my bike like I stole it. It's it all seems to work. I have a small sleeping pad that is made. I'm not sure what exactly the material is, but I think it's that windshield protector for the sun, that you put inside to keep the sun from heating your car up too much.
Oh, okay.
And I cut it. Yeah. So I cut a little bit of that to make a small sleeping pad. And the reason was I just didn't trust a blow up air pad. If I got a hole in it, I knew I wouldn't be able to cope, and I didn't want to take that risk. I couldn't I didn't trust myself to be able to fix a hole in it or find time or want to. I didn't want to introduce that level of frustration. And the big square sleeping pads, or the rectangular ones that fold up, like they're just huge and bulky, and I didn't want to carry one of those. And I'm kind of fragile at night. I get cold very easily. I'll be fine in the day, but as soon as I stop moving, my body temperature just drops, especially if I'm under like stress and fatigue. So I knew I wanted something. I crafted this like back in 2018, and I hadn't used it a lot. I often, use a sleeping blow up mat or something. So I was glad to bring this into action, and so grateful that I had it, because I was able to sleep in some colder places where other people were like, shivering the night away or finding shelter in like porta potties. And I was happy to be comfortable. I also had a sleeping bag that was rated to, 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius, paired with emergency reflective bivy. So it was a lightweight setup. The reflective bivy and the sleeping pad were dirt cheap. The sleeping bag was like so much money. So it kind of balanced out, I guess. Two cheap items, one pricey one, but I was able to stay warm. And I think those are some of the features that make my gear like a little bit more, a little unique. And I always had my rain jacket handy because it rained like every day. So I stopped putting it away, and I just like Velcroed it to my aero bars. So all of the photos, I had this like rain jacket like attached to my bicycle, just because I couldn't waste that 30 seconds to like, get off the bike and pull it out of my seat post bag. It just became too cumbersome.
Wow. That's focus when you're like, I don't want to spend time to get my jacket out. Which brings me to the next question. Of course, you did sleep at some point, right?
Definitely. Yeah. At a race this long, you've gotta sleep and give your body a chance to recover.
So how did you kind of plan it out? Or was it your body told you when it was time to sleep?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I hoped to get at least 4 hours, and trying to get more. Lachlan Morton famously had a fastest run on our fastest, ride on the route, and it doesn't count as an official time because he had a media crew, but his strategy was to sleep about 6 hours every night. And that is more than usual in ultra cycling. I think in this, anytime you're not riding your bike, you're not moving forward, and you've got to prioritize that time, making progress on the course. So the longer you're sleeping, the less progress you're going to make.
Right.
But that being said, if you are able to sleep and then come back stronger and faster, then, you might be able to go faster than if you, didn't sleep much and you're just making bad decisions and in a real fatigue state and riding slower and just kind of bogging down. So I aim to sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, and I did a pretty good job of sticking to it. And there were times when I was having a rough day, and I did try to get more sleep out on those times when I didn't have a good day. I was like, okay, Meaghan, let's try and hit the reset button. And part of how I did that was, set my alarm to be 5 or 6 hours, and which doesn't sound like a lot of sleep, but it was more than I would otherwise be getting. And I was hoping to make it to certain, end points each day. I would kind of see how things were going around lunchtime and assess where I would hope to get to at night. And some days I would have to push through, the fatigue to get there. And other times it was a little more open. I was okay to maybe I just got there or I didn't get there, whatever. But I really let fatigue be my guide when I was going to sleep. And every time I went to lie down, I was just out within 5 minutes, which was awesome. It was nice to not waste any time tossing and turning or anything like that, or to find myself in a situation where I had to go to sleep too early. That never happened either.
Yeah, I can only imagine if you laid your head down and then you were thinking about, okay, if I fall asleep right now, I'll get 4 hours and 25 minutes, just to go past that and just pass out as soon as you lay down. That's perfect.
Definitely, yeah. And I know other cyclists have talked about having like a nighttime routine, kind of some meditative stuff that they do to get themselves in a good headspace to just to relax. And one of the things that I do is like I'm pretty competitive, so I don't check the tracker. I don't want to know where other racers are before I go to bed because that will just rile me up and make me want to like get back on my bike again and start putting on miles. So I do check the tracker when I wake up if I have self-service so that I can get amped up and get going real quick if I'm feeling sluggish. But yeah, before I go to bed, I really just try to like mentally relax as much as I can and just kind of slow down so that I fall asleep as quickly as possible.
When you are on, to me, from the videos that I've seen, the Tour Divide, most of those roads can get pretty rugged. So if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, obviously you're biking in the dark. So how did you, were you trusting moonlight, or did you have enough battery power to keep your lights on, or how did that work?
That is definitely something you have to consider, like how will you light up the night and how much night riding are you willing to do? Because the event takes place around summer solstice. It's like the best time of the year to be, out for these long days because the days are so long. I had a dynamo on my front wheel, which powered my front light. So as long as the dynamo didn't break, I would always have a front light.
Nice.
And then it powered like a charging block that I used to charge my Garmin InReach, to charge my bike computer, and to charge my front, my headlamp. Yeah, my little headlamp battery. So I had a small headlamp that I would put on at night, and then my front light was pretty bright. Between those two, it seemed like it was okay. The front, the headlamp was really nice because if I needed to reach into my bags or anything like that, you can't see. You just can't see except ahead of you with the front bike light. So it was nice to be able to have that confidence that, if I had to fix something on my bike, I'd be able to have this little third eye on my head and be able to see things really well. And I did always try and take a little more care at night. I've heard of so many accidents. I witnessed a really bad bike crash when I was touring for a Race Across America team, and it was like devastating, like broken bones all over the place, like busted teeth, like fully unconscious. And I think that left me with it just indicated like how serious a crash can be. And also at night things things can be even worse because your senses, you might be mentally a little bit more sluggish. It's harder to see things, and animals are so much more active around dusk and dawn. So I just did try to ride a little bit more cautiously. And that's not to say that I probably wasn't blessed by a bit of luck as well and having like safe runs at night. But I ideally would have minimized night riding a bit more, but I just like never seemed to get to where I wanted to go before like midnight, which ended up meaning that I was going to bed later and then sleeping in later and then getting up after the sunrise. So I think my ideal schedule would be getting off the bike at like 10:30 and then getting back on the bike again around 4:30 and having a 6-hour sleep rest get on window, because there's and then you're really only night riding for like an hour or less on each end, which is pretty minimal.
Anything surprise you doing the Divide, whether it was physical, mental, terrain? I don't know. Anything surprise you?
New Mexico is so hard. It is a very challenging state, and it's a lot of punchy climbs, a lot of really rough quad trail. And I think it's even harder because it's at the end. And in an ultra race, things get like exponentially harder as you go on. Like it just gets more and more impossible seeming. But also the gravel in Colorado was so nice. So it was such a sharp change. Like it almost seemed unreal and unfair. And a lot of things that feel unfair, and they're not. They're just the way they are, right? There's no there's no like judge of fairness. Like how can so I think that was one surprise. I had a really really rough adjustment period that first day in New Mexico. And then the other thing that surprised me was the amount of dot watchers and community support the event has. And I knew it was I knew it was well known. There was that movie Ride the Divide that had come out, and you can see some of the support from dot watchers and people along the route in that. But there's just a lot of people who care about this event and come out to cheer you on, and people would meet me at gas stations to take selfies. People would be on the side of the road ringing cowbells in the middle of the night, and there'd be little coolers left in random places at the end of people's driveways with a sign saying "Tour Divide Riders, help yourself" with cold drinks and granola bars. So the unexpected support of the community and Trail Angels was a huge boost. I've done other ultras, and I've never experienced this, this amount of support for a race. So it was really cool to be on the receiving end of all of that.
So you've done, I don't even know how many, a lot of ultra endurance races, and you have all kinds of first places and FKTs, and just you're really, really successful. You're really good at it. You've found the sweet spot as far as training and mental and all that good stuff. So what do you think it is about endurance races that keeps you coming back and keeps that makes you so successful?
It's always an adventure, and I love that. You're never going to know exactly what that adventure will look like, but going into it that there's going to be some sort of challenge that you will overcome, and there will be hard things and beautiful things. So you kind of know what the ingredients are, but you don't know how they'll cook up. Yeah. And that excites me. And it makes the hard parts easier to bear, because there'll be lots of rewards, and you're going to grow and learn something about yourself. And you don't know what exactly heading into it, but I've never finished a race and been like, well, that was a waste of time. There's always been some sort of bigger lesson or opportunity for human connection or emotional growth, or just the pleasure of being outside for that long is something I really enjoy. So I think the community and the environment and the chance to compete and really push myself, all of those things together kind of just, from this, it's a great confluence of things for me. And I think my background in long distance bike touring, as well as with other sports like rugby and roller derby, where there's a lot of outside training involved, like going to the gym and thinking about tactics and strategy, I was able to take all those things I learned and apply them to self-supported bike pack racing. So I kind of had some useful, I not tools, but I understood how my body reacted to training, and I understood the idea of tactics and how to kind of make use of those skills for this sport.
Mm-hmm. I rode across the United States in 2022, just as, recreationally, just for fun with some friends. And all of the friends that I went with were all Ironman triathletes, which I had to learn the hard way. Just their mindset is so different than, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go on a bike ride and it's fun. But if it's too windy, I don't want to be part of it. Or, if my butt starts to hurt, I'm done. Where they have learned, like you do with your ultra endurance, they've learned to suffer, and I don't want to say they enjoy it, but they can work through that. And it was just so fun to watch them teach me to figure out how to ride across America.
Wow, what an interesting group to find yourself in as the odd one out.
Yeah, totally. And, we had so many meetings ahead of time, and I'm like, you guys, if you're going to have me along, you have to realize that, my brain works different than you guys. And somehow we made it work, and we made it ocean to ocean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible.
So any, I don't know if advice is the right word, but did you have any tricks to keep yourself positive and focused as you're grinding out those miles?
One of the things I always say to myself is consistently consistent. And I think that's to make the challenge seem more manageable. Like you don't have to do like a hero push at the end. You don't have to, sprint up a hill. You just have to do kind of the same thing, put the effort in day after day. And remembering to be consistent, whether that's in training or in the race, just that just being consistently consistent. I like the sound of it. And the other thing that I picked up in Banff from the winner of the race, Justinas Levikas, he was hanging out, I guess outside the bike shop, and I just dropped something off there, and we chatted a bit, and I was like, oh, it's like a race that, like, who's done it already? Do you have any advice for a rookie like me? And he said, things are hard. Look up, look to the mountains, look to the sky, just look up and gaze around, and, you will feel better. You'll be inspired. You'll remember where you are and feel gratitude. And I did that so many times during the race when things were hard, or when I was starting to like feel grumpy or fixate on like a pain in my ankle or something. I looked up, and I always, just felt connected to the environment, and it was a real reminder for me anyways, of gratitude, just to be where I am in that moment in time, and maybe immerse myself more fully in the place rather than the weird emotional headspace that I was starting to fall into. So, looking around you is so important. And, if you're racing down a hill or something like that, you might want to just stop and look around. I don't know. It's hard to stop on hills. But those views, they're always changing, and sometimes they're gone before we know it, and they're replaced by something else.
Yeah, and that's such good advice, just to be in the moment, because all that pain's going to go away, or you hope that it's going to go away, but just those memories. How you spend a day on your bike and so many things will happen, like, oh my God, that was so fun. I got to remember that. I got to remember this. And then a week later, you're like, well, it was really fun, but I'd have to look back at my photos to really see what happened that day. So at least that's for me. I love being in the moment, but my memory doesn't really work that way.
I'm totally with you there. And I actually have a hard time with like taking photos, because I love the experience of being in motion, but to get a good photo, you have to stop and think about angles and things like that. Yeah. And I don't like to stop to break that spell that I'm under. So I often just take photos while I'm in motion, and they're blurry and not great, but I guess they serve the purpose to maybe jog my memory later on about, especially if I'm writing about a place, to give me a little like more clues about what it was actually like and what's in my memory purely. And but I think that it seems like almost a shame to not stop and take photos that are actually like composed a bit better, because you're in such amazing places when you're on a bike, and you can pull over places you can't when you're in a car. So really seems like there's no excuses.
Well, maybe your future races and events that you do, you'll have to hire a film crew or a photographer that can follow you and not, ruin your moment, but capture those moments.
Right. I'm always like, oh, just buy like a postcard from this place. I'll find somebody else who's taken a better picture than me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, well, you've done all of these epic adventures and you've won so many races. Like, do you have a what's next? Do you know what you're going to do next?
I'm going to do Arkansas High Country in early October. I just signed up. I'm really stoked. It's 1,000-mile race, and it starts in Russellville, and it's half paved, half gravel. I think the gravel is pretty wild, and it's just kind of funny because I did Ozark Gravel Dune in Arkansas in March, and I did not expect out of all the places in the world I could return to would be Arkansas, a place that's not particularly convenient for me to fly to, but it's full of wonderful people and great adventure cycling, and I'm pretty stoked to get after this event.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast to share your story about your most recent win, but is there a place that people can go to find out more, maybe order your book or find out about some of the other events that you've been in?
For sure. Yeah, they could check out my website, meaghanhackinen.com, and I'm on Instagram under Meaghan Hackinen and Facebook at Meaghan Hackinen. So I'm sure you can spell that out in the show notes because it's Meaghan with all the letters. It's not it's not intuitively spelled. And and you can definitely find my book. Most bookstores are able to order it. Places like Barnes and Noble or Amazon, or in Canada, Chapters or Indigo. If you're interested in a signed copy, you can DM me and we can talk about that. Just shipping is sometimes expensive to out of country places. And my newest book, Shifting Gears, just became available on audiobooks. I'm super excited to celebrate that and give people another way to listen to it. So you can listen to a book about biking while you're on your bike if you want. And you can find that on Audible and audiobooks.ca and wherever you buy audiobooks.
And Shifting Gears is about your Trans Am bike race?
That's right. Yeah. Which was my first ultra. So you're kind of like sensing a theme here. Like my first long distance tour was South Away, and Shifting Gears was my first ultra. And I don't have another book in the pipeline at the moment, but I've been working on different essays. So I'm hoping to maybe put together a collection of personal essays. And essays sound boring, but they're more like journal entry pieces focused on adventure cycling and different experiences and some of the relationships, friendships, romantic relationships with family members that I've explored while being out on a bike.
Nice. Well, I look forward to following you along on social media on your next adventure, and just keep on doing what you're doing because you're very inspiring.
Oh man, right back at you. It's been a joy to be on this podcast, and I look forward to digging into the vault and listening to more of your interviews with people while I'm on the bike to keep me going.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Meaghan.
Thanks for having me.
Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit both my Facebook and Instagram pages for daily entertainment. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener.